Today, we will be talking about the best feats, in my opinion, in Baldur's Gate 3. There is really not much to add to this introduction, so I will just jump right into it. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoy and will find it helpful. Let's start with the good old ability improvement. If you are unsure about what to pick, ability improvement is always a good thing to consider. You can either increase your main statistic by 2 or 2 of them by 1, and depending on your stat spread, it might unlock the next tier of bonuses for your character. For example, more wisdom as a druid or cleric will improve your spellcasting ability, rising your dexterity while using finesse weapons might give you +1 attack and damage rolls, constitution will improve your health, so for our first choice, ability improvement is always something worthy to consider. The alert feat is not to be ignored, especially on wizards that want to cast their spells fast in combat. For example, if you want to haste your strongest party member right away, or cast that fireball on a group of enemies before they have time to react. So for some builds, especially caster blasters, it is a great feat to consider. As a bonus, you will also never be surprised. And on the same note, a quick mention of the Elemental Adept feat. It can be very handy for some builds, especially the Storm Sorcerer, because you will use your lightning spells a lot and you don't want the enemy to resist them. And also enemies that would be normally immune to it will not be anymore. On top of that, you will hit a bit more often because you no longer can roll a 1 on those type of spells. Next is Great Weapon Master. When you will start getting more attack bonuses under your belt, Great Weapon Master is great to have, because you are going to add a whopping 10 damage to all your attacks. But remember, you will receive a -5 to attack rolls. But the later you're gonna get in the game, the less you're gonna feel it because your attack rolls gonna improve. It's also great for classes like the Barbarian, who can roll advantage on targets thanks to his reckless attack, making you feel this -5 roll even less. There are also plenty of other ways to have literal advantage on targets, like from plenty of gear for example, so -5 is not as scary as it looks. Not only that, you also will get a bonus attack when you land a critical hit on target, or after you're gonna kill it with a melee weapon. It's important to note that you can use it with any weapon, you don't even necessarily have to wield a two-hander in order to activate this, but without a heavy weapon you won't be able to activate this +10 to damage roll and -5 to attack. Also remember that you have to be proficient in a weapon in order to activate this buff. If you played Divinity Original Sin before, it's a little bit like the Executioner talent, but even better. There are plenty of ways in Baldur's Gate 3 to have an advantage on the target you're attacking, not only inherited by some classes, but also by the plethora of items you're gonna see in the game, so it's a great option if you want to wield a heavy weapon. Magic Initiate feats can be pretty interesting. Warlock is a bit of a trap, because yes, you can take Eldritch Blast, but it won't scale with your charisma, so it's not that great by itself. It's better to take 2 levels of Warlock for Agonizing Blast than sacrificing your feat for something minor like this. If anything, Armor of Agathys can be more tempting, but again, usually you get Armor of Agathys by just multiclassing to a Warlock, or if you take the Draconic Bloodline White, and then you're gonna get Armor of Agathys as well. Wizards and Sorcerer are pretty good because you can get the Shield spell, which is very handy to have. But again, it all depends on your build, and those feats are more situational and better suited for specific build guides. Polearm Master is a great feat in many builds, especially if you use two-handed reach weapons, like the spear or halberd. It gives you a small additional attack as a bonus action, a bit similar to an offhand attack when you're dual wielding, and even though it doesn't do a huge amount of damage, you're still gonna add your damage modifier to it, so it's not that terrible. It's also great on builds that create on-hit weapon attacks. So for example, after you confirm a hit on a target, a paladin can cast a smite with this, and smite is fully scalable, so it doesn't matter if you do 1 damage or 10 with your weapon, you can add a massive damage on top of it thanks to this feature. So it's usually taken by paladins, but there's also some cool builds with other classes that you can use this feat for. Not to mention, you will also be able to make an opportunity attack when a target comes within range, meaning your opportunity attacks will get extended by the reach of your weapon. And that's why it's great with the combination with the feat we're going to talk about next, which is Sentinel. It's great for protecting your allies, especially on Tactician difficulty when the enemy will focus on your spellcasters and weaker members. When an enemy within melee range attacks an ally, you can use a reaction to make a weapon attack against that enemy. And on top of that, you get advantage on opportunity attacks. And you are going to stop this enemy from moving till the end of the turn. So not only will you make more damage and be more versatile with the Polearm Master feat, now you will also be able to protect your allies with Sentinel. So this combination is great to take as a fighter who gets more feats per level, and also if you intend to stay as a pure class, for example as a paladin, it's good to consider those 2 feats if you want to use those polearm weapons. And I just wanted to mention that there is actually a lot of polearm weapons in Baldur's Gate 3. I am currently in Act 3 already, and they are plentiful. The weapon I'm using right now, without spoiling anything, is actually the best I encountered yet. I also wanted to mention the Resillient feat, which can be very good. If you will not need the +2 ability score improvement, but still need 1 point to rise your wisdom from 17 to 18 for example, it might be better to take the Resillient feat, because on top of getting +1 to the given statistic, you're actually gonna have proficiency in saving throws. Just make sure that you don't don't have it already. Proficiency in Wisdom, for example, is great to have, because there is a lot of spells that require Wisdom saving throws. But Constitution is also amazing, especially if you are going to cast your spells in melee range, because enemies can easily distract your concentration on spells if you don't have the proficiency in Constitution, or even advantage on those rolls, so it's very good to consider. Strength is probably the least used, but all the others have their merit. Now we come to the Sharpshooter feat, which is like Great Weapon Master but for ranged characters, so for your bows and crossbows. On top of that, you will also not receive penalties from high ground rules, meaning if you will shoot from below your target, you will not get the -2 penalty to attack rolls, which is just a bonus to an already great feat. It's especially effective when you use two-hand crossbows, because both attacks can add +10 damage to the roll. It's an amazing feat, maybe even mandatory for subclasses like the Assassin and the Gloomstalker. Next to Sharpshooter, we also have the Crossbow Expert feat. But it is of course implemented differently from tabletop D&D, because some things just don't translate well to a video game. Solarian has added that their custom piercing shot ability will now inflict gaping wounds for twice as long. And of course the main sell of this feat is that you can attack targets now without disadvantage in melee range, which if you intend to use only a ranged weapon is very good to have. But unlike tabletop, I don't think it's mandatory and you can live without this, because usually you are just going to change to your dexterity melee weapon, but still if you have the Sharpshooter talent, maybe you want to maximize your attack rolls every turn and you want to take this feat to always be able to apply this Sharpshooter effect to all of your attacks and also never be disadvantaged with your ranged weapon. So it is definitely a feat to consider for ranged builds. Spell Sniper is pretty good, especially for warlocks, because now you can crit more often with your Eldritch Blast. If you use the Firebolt a lot as a wizard or sorcerer, it's also something to consider. I know it doesn't sound overwhelmingly good, but there is actually a lot of items in the game to boost its damage or maximize it or even trigger some other effects. So it's a decent feat, not the one that I would pick first, but maybe on the later levels it is something you might want to consider. But usually there are better ones to pick. Now we get to Tavern Brawler, probably the most OP feat in the game currently, especially for some specific builds. Not only does it work with the druid's shapeshifting ability, so if you're a moon druid it's almost mandatory to take, it's also great if you have a throwing build, especially as a berserker barbarian. And perhaps most importantly, of course, the monk. What it does is you add your strength modifier twice to your damage and attack rolls, with unarmed attacks, improvised weapons, and when you throw something. A very popular build currently is the Berserker Barbarian with this feat, because you add Frenzied Throw, and when you throw javelins and other heavy stuff, you will do tons of damage from range and also almost always hit with it. And another cool build is also the Strength-based Monk. You forgo your Dexterity bonus and the Unarmored Defense feature of the Monk in favor of going the Strength route with armor and shield possibly, because monks have a lot of attacks based on attacking without a weapon, like Stunning Strike or Flurry of Blows. And I am currently testing and not sure yet if it actually works with Flurry of Blows, because some people are reporting that it doesn't add the strength bonus because it's based on dexterity, but from what I saw it actually does replace the dexterity bonus with strength, but I am not sure if it's a bug or not. Either way, it's an amazing feat for shapeshifting druids, monks, and especially the Berserker Barbarian, which I might even make a guide for. Now for our last feat, I just wanted to group up the heavy armor, moderately armored, and lightly armored feats. They are actually a bit of a trap of a feat, because usually it's better to take one level of fighter or cleric in order to get all of those feats at once. Of course, you won't get the +1 strength or dexterity, but still, in my opinion, in most cases it's a bit of a waste to take one of those feats. Because usually when you want to take heavier armor, you will be multiclassing anyway and will be getting one of those features, but among them, moderately armored is probably the best because it also gives you the shield proficiency. So usually those feats are not worth it, but yeah, there are some builds that can use it. Okay, and the last group of the video is the Heavy Armor Master and the Medium Armor Master. Heavy Armor Master isn't that bad if you don't need the +2 from ability score improvements. If you just need a +1 to an ability score, it's better to take Heavy Armor Master, because on top of that you're gonna get an additional 3 bonus reduction from most sources. So if you need that +1 in strength and you don't need the other ability score improvement, it is something to consider. Medium Armor Master gonna increase your bonus armor to +3 and you will no longer have disadvantage on stealth checks. But sadly, I don't know why, but it doesn't give you +1 dexterity, so it's not that great. And also, I saw quite a few armors in the game that already removed the disadvantage on stealth checks on medium armors. So yeah, again, there are better picks out there. And this concludes the list of best feats in Baldur's Gate 3 in my opinion. Please tell me in the comments if I missed your favorite feat. I would love to hear your opinion on the ones presented here and also maybe some other ones. And now, if you excuse me, I will go back to playing Baldur's Gate 3 and exploring more builds possibilities for all of you guys. I am nearing level 10, but there is still plenty of things for me to explore. I have barely touched the city itself. Perhaps I will even stream today on Twitch TV Cainra, so come visit me if you want. Thank you very much for watching this video and for all the amazing reception that you've been showing me the past month. We just broke 3,000 subscriptions recently on the channel, so I can't thank you enough for watching my content. I hope it is helpful, and I'll see you again in next videos very soon.